Hello, everybody. I'm Monique, and if you've been following, well, if you're watching this video, that means you're on my blog or crossed or somebody shared it somewhere. But it's going to be posted on my blog. So I have an About My Faith page where I am tracking my Christian journey, and that's where I'll be sharing this. So, by way of introduction, I'm a Cameroonian. I am a youth worker, a writer, and a feminist educationalist. Yeah, a big term to just say I do gender and education, or I study gender and education at a graduate level. So, what is this? Why am I doing this video? Well, I have decided, just short of my 29th birthday, that I'm going to take up something I postponed for a while, something I didn't really see myself doing, and that is sharing my testimony. Okay, so if you're like me if you were like me, that didn't come out right. If you're like I was, then when you hear the word testimony, you have an image of people falling down in church, talking about being delivered from some possession or things like that. And that image or people who would seem like it needs to be something that you make a case for God. And that image put me off for a while from the idea of testifying. I thought it was something that you had to I was barren for 9 years and now I can conceive, or I overcome this spiritual force, or I did this. I thought that was just it for testimonies. Recently, however, while attending a church in South Africa, where I'm studying temporarily, I attended a youth service, and the young people there were encouraged to testify. And I saw undergraduates sharing their story of how they came to know God, how they came to join the Christian faith, why they're there. And I was really impressed. There was no show about it. It was a simple telling of a story. Okay. And the humility in it, and the fact that their stories really resonated in a way that no sermon could, made me consider. And that was a month or more ago. So it really made me consider, okay, perhaps I should share my testimony, but probably not at church at this time. Yeah, because I'm still a new member there. But as I was reading A Purpose-Driven Life, I'm rereading it this year ahead of my birthday. And I mentioned that in the previous blog. I came across day 37, which challenges us to share our stories and gives some tips on how to do that. So I'm using some tips from there and some tips from other blogs, other sites I found online as well, on how to really share you're coming to Christianity testimony, because you have many different types of testimonies, or you can testify about many different events in your life, many different life-changing circumstances. Okay, so now that I've introduced why I'm doing it and who I am, what am I testifying to? And that will be, I'll be testifying to God's goodness in my life, I guess, and why I identify as Christian. What makes me, or what the foundations of my convictions are. And I think this is important because you should be able to explain why you believe in something, especially something that is so very questionable in our present day. It's not like we were there to see Jesus. So I think it's something that he should be able to justify as a rational human being. especially as an educated human being. So I have a plan. I've never done this before. I've never shared a testimony before, so this video is probably going to be long. I'm just going to try and cover the sections or the themes they suggested, and that begins with how I became a Christian, like your life before and after. What was the transformation process? For me, I can say, if you're considering Christianity as an identity, something that you feel you check on a form, or at the on a census box, or census form, sorry, a box on a census form, or perhaps something that you have to write down when asked, then in that case I've been a Christian all my life, because they would say you were born in the at least the central part of Cameroon and raised in the northwest part of Cameroon. Your family is Christian. Those regions are mostly Christian. You went to church. You were baptized by the age of 3. You probably prayed before every meal. Yes, I was taught to pray before every meal and pray before you sleep. We were taught Psalm 23. I remember even I asked to do my first confirmation when I was in Form 3, and I remember that it was because all my friends were confirming, and when they had their confirmations, it would be an event in school. So it was like you were going to have 2 visiting Sundays that term. Your parents were going to come, or your family was going to come twice, and they were bringing food and drinks and things. So I wanted that. So that was the reason why I was asking. I want to get confirmed now. And I got it. And I remember an aunt, a born again aunt, who was really kind of like those tough, self-righteous side. But she says, I remember she told me, so you said you're confirmed now. What are you, a confirmed sinner? Looking back at that, I think I get her, because I actually didn't know what I was confirming. But I also don't think that's the way it was supposed to be said, and that wasn't a teaching moment, or that was a teaching moment that she didn't use to teach. So but that's how I got confirmed. That's what made me Christian. I had a communion card and everything belonging to the church. You could identify me as Christian. However, I wouldn't consider that the start of my Christian journey at all. If asked, I would say my Christian journey began in 2007. Yeah, 2007. I had previously had very, I wouldn't say a rough upbringing, but not a quite settled one. I moved around a lot from various homes. My mother is a single mother, and she struggled to raise 2 kids and be both a mother and a father. And in the course of doing that, she dropped a lot of balls. In the course of juggling all these balls, she dropped a lot of them in parenting. And I essentially had to create what my own values were, create what my own idea of home is, and so on and so forth. And what also marked my youth was that I was very misunderstood and trying to belong, because of all these places you're going to, you're trying to get accepted, you're trying to belong somewhere. And you question yourself a lot of low self-esteem, question your worth, and that came from many areas, especially family, but our society as well, society in general. So you could say, what brought me to the point to 2007, I was literally giving up on life. I had no interest in living. I saw no interest in living. I was depressed, and I didn't think it was worth it. I didn't think I was good enough, and I didn't think the trying to please people, the struggle to belong, the longing you felt, or the longings you felt, could be understood by those around you. You're just supposed to, and I'm not saying I'm not starving. I was definitely not starving. I was sheltered. I was well catered for. So, but you had your own issues. You had an emptiness you couldn't explain, or I couldn't explain then. And you had adjustment issues, which of course can be understood now, but back then you really just can't say anything. You're a child. I remember at one point I made an attempt to take my life in boarding school, and I was insulted. Like, are you mad? You're here in a well-to-do boarding school, and you're trying to do this and ruin our reputation, or that kind of thing. So obviously no counseling. We're talking about African African mentality here, and little people, no one to really understand. The second time though was that was in 2007, and it was more serious. See, the first time I actually told people. So if you're telling people, just the fact that somebody that is expressing suicidal thought is telling you, means they might not really want to die. They're asking for help. Save me. But the second time, I had left, I had switched schools again. Not only was I switching homes, I was made to switch schools several times. And I had enough. So I dropped out. I was in lower Sith, 1 year to the advanced level, and I was doing sciences, econs, biology. Oh, no, actually, sorry, that's not sciences. I was in CPC Bali doing the sciences, chemistry, biology, geography, which should be S4, I think, a series. And I was doing this, and I felt like it was pointless. I was doing this because I was trying to impress people. Again, I didn't want to do the sciences, but I was told, or I had been given the impression that if you do the sciences, you're smart, and if you do the arts, you're not. And in the everlasting cycle of trying to please people and trying to belong and trying to be accepted and trying to be respected, trying to be loved, you ended up in the wrong class. So I just got frustrated at one point and finally dropped out. It was a very rough time. Dropping out from a boarding school where your deposit has already been paid is a taboo in any family house, in any African household. And of course, I was, summarily, in a way you can say I was summarily disowned. But I could still stay with my cousin. I still had shelter. I wasn't on the streets. I still had access to food for a while. I mean, I still had somebody that was an adult in the house for a while. And at that time, I was moving around again, trying to understand what I am, trying to defend myself for having to take that decision and why I did that. I'm trying to explain that no, I'm not this spoiled child. I actually have a problem, and it's a legitimate problem. Yet, in a way, I'm not saying that I wasn't a spoiled child, but in a way, I probably was, but in more ways than one, I wasn't. So I was somebody that actually needed help and nobody there to understand it, and I was there with an emotional problem. So In the course of that year, the cousin was no longer there. That was another issue I had to overcome. So there I was, alone, disowned, and oh yeah, this is in a foreign city. I was no longer in the northwest or southwest. I was now in Yaoundé. I can't speak French, or at that time I couldn't speak a word of French, and I can't communicate. I was like practically speaking pidgin with anybody on the way, trying to pick up words here and there. And I remember having to sell stuff in the house to hawk them. I'll go to the small shacks or salons around, and those people loved me because I was selling very expensive things for about 3,500, 2,000. I mean, the Bamleke spirit in me came out at that time. and I was selling these things, household items that I was left at home with. I was disowned in this house with. So I was selling them so I could find something to eat. And I remember one day I just said, "But what the heck? Why are you struggling?" And I came across a bottle of expired pain relievers. I think it's an Advil bottle, so they're ibuprofen, and you could tell they were expired because the dust, it already started like molding the powder. And I took a handful of them, not really that full, but sufficient for you to wrap your fist around and swallow. And I swallowed them and went to bed thinking that's it. Next time I open my eyes, I'll be on a line in front of the gates of heaven and preparing to attack God or his angels on why they messed me up. Right? So I was angry. I was like ready. A few hours later, I got up from sleep. A very deep sleep, but sleep. And I got up nauseous and I went and threw up everything. Yeah, so that didn't work. I was literally my version of No Way to Die. And if you've read Linus T. Azong's book, and so I remember going back to the room from after throwing up everything, and I was just on the bed, tired. I couldn't do anything. I was just thinking, what else can I do? And at that time, I heard a knock on the door. It was my neighbor's house help, and we know, these kind of house helps that they've gone to the village and taken a girl about 13, at most age 15. She should have been between the ages of 12 and 15, and she knocked on my door and greeted me when I opened it, and I was wondering like, why did you knock? Or what's the problem? And then she was a bit shy, and she said, "Auntie, now there's somebody calling me auntie, and I'm there in lower state. Can you imagine?" Or I was lower state age. And she's like, "Auntie, can I ask you, that thing that you gave me last time, can you help me, teach me how to make it?" And I was like, "What thing?" And I remember that after selling off something particularly at a good price, one of the whole household items, I had made pancakes, and she had loved it. It was her first time to eat them, and she was so happy. I was giving her this out of guilt because she was the one, when she dry cleans the side of the veranda, she always came and dry cleaned my side as well, so my side was clean. So I remember I was actually giving her that pancakes out of guilt, but seems like she just loved the idea. She just loved the pancakes so much that she thought I was being very friendly, and came to me to help her to learn how to do it. In the days that followed, I learned a bit of her story, how she was taken, the fact that she wasn't earning anything, the fact that she wanted to go to school. She had gone to school up to primary school level. She just had her first school leaving certificate. In fact, her life literally made mine look so extremely privileged that I was ashamed. And that marked some sort of a turning point. That although I had a problem that I couldn't name, I couldn't explain, somebody obviously had a problem that was very nameable, that was very obvious and easy to feel. So I went back and I was that's in subsequent days, I was thinking about this girl and what she's going through, and the fact that she has nowhere to run when she's abused. I was thinking about that one night when a ceremony came on TV, and I think I was just scrolling through channels because I wasn't actually watching a Christian channel. I wasn't going to church or anything at that time. We were going to church at that time because of school, and in the absence of a boarding school, I didn't actually find myself going to church. So at this sermon, the only thing I remember from the sermon is them saying, when you want to pray and you get distracted, like your phone rings or you get a notification or this happens, those are things that distract you. And the person said it so funny, in such a funny way, that made me laugh. So I wasn't really I didn't get the whole sermon, I just got a tidbit, and that funny tidbit made me laugh. And I remember continuing, I left the channel on because of that. Towards the end, where they always say, so if you haven't given your life to Christ yet, it's Team Be Evangelist, of course. If you haven't given your life to Christ yet, I invite you to bow your head and join me in prayer. So that was middle of 2007. By that time it was second term, because I dropped out in first term towards the ending of first term. So by that time it was second term, and it would probably have been April or May of 2007. So I bowed down my head that night in April or May of 2007, and I prayed, saying, I remember exactly that prayer and I consider that my turning point, and my transitioning period, my beginning of my Christian journey. And that beginning prayer was, dear God, I tried to kill myself this week and you didn't allow me to. So this life is now yours, and if it messes up, if anything happens, it's your fault, it's not mine. So I was literally threatening God with my first prayer. I wouldn't call that I don't think that's the typical giving your life to Christ prayer, but yeah, it's what worked for me. I was literally saying, okay, now I've tried everything. This life isn't going the way I think life should, and it's not working and I don't think it's right. So I tried to give up and you wouldn't allow me to give up. So the fact that you're keeping me here, you had better have something better up your sleeves than this, and I'm expecting you to show me. From then, with that prayer, I can't say your life just changed overnight. No, definitely not. But because it's kind of and I think this is what happens with all prayer, it's kind of like therapy. People often ask, why do you pray? You're praying to some they say you're praying to some magical being, and you don't get an answer, so why do you pray? And I think it's twofold. On one way, it's therapy. We pray to release. When you get down on your knees, it's like lying on the therapist's couch and releasing everything that's bottled up within you, giving it to somebody else. And that alone, just releasing it, just having to verbalize what you need, what's disturbing you, is already an answered prayer. It's already a form of answering. Secondly, another way you get a response is if you believe, of course, if you believe, and we do believe that there is a God that hears these prayers and answers them in one way or the other. So that night, I wouldn't say that transitional prayer changed me. I wouldn't say I got up the next day feeling better and now a Christian and everything. No, the next day I was still in the same place. I still needed to sell something in that house to find something to eat. I still was struggling. But what had changed by releasing was that I now had a bit of hope, because I think I felt like I had told somebody that had more control over everything than me. Obviously he had more control because I tried to take my life and he didn't let me. So yeah, you have more control. So yes, that alone, that power alone made me to start looking around like, okay, what is he trying to show me? What can I do? What does he want me to do right now? And that marked the beginning of my Christian journey, because I started to ask questions and I started to seek God, even if it's only seeking for signs, which is like a baby step. But at that time, I was seeking. I was interested in knowing. I wasn't trying to run away from life. And like I said, it's not an automatic change. It's a very gradual change. But I would say beginning that Christian journey marked a lot of changes and the course of my life throughout. I remember how I got myself out of that apartment, out of that situation, was by believing that, okay, there's a sign, there's something that I'm supposed to do, someone I'm supposed to find, a sign, something I'm supposed to see, because I'm still here. And I thought of a friend of my mother's. At that time, nobody was talking to me, so I just remember a friend of my mother's who she had, I had been introduced to very briefly. And I remember the woman was attending a Presbyterian church, Bastos. That's what I remembered from her. That her church she goes to is PC Bastos. I'm in Yaoundé. I just have to find PC Bastos, sell something, the house, get money again, find PC Bastos and find this woman there. That's all. I just had her name. And I went, and that's how I went and looked for somebody to tell that I need help. I dropped out of school. I have been disowned. This is my problem. Can you help me get my life in order? This is what has happened to me in the course of this year. I'll not detail anything because I don't want to incriminate anybody. But I found her by going to church and asking around the CWF groups. Okay, please, do you know where this person is? Can I have her number? I lied like, oh, I was supposed to meet her, but I don't have her number. I was supposed to meet her in church. Things like that. And they gave me the number, and I contacted her. She told me to come to her place, how to get to her place. I went there and I explained everything. I was very moved. I think she was kind of shocked at all I was going through and what I was telling her had happened in the course of that year. But she believed in me enough to say she'll talk to her husband about taking me in. So that abandoned house, and the person, obviously I don't know, they had paid the rent a certain month, so luckily the landlord wasn't on the door. They didn't know it was only a child living there, but we just cleared what was there, and she handled it. She took over adulting for me for that while. And while staying with her, for the first time that I actually saw a family unit the way it's supposed to be, I guess. Each family has its flaws, but you saw the mother, the father, the children, the unity, the traditions, their own customs, things that they do. You saw some semblance of order and normality and people who belong. And so that was home for a while. Also in that place, and I'm linking all this, of course, to my faith, because I wouldn't have had, if not for that prayer, that resignation, if not for that seeking for signs, I wouldn't be looking for this woman. I wouldn't have all of these subsequent steps wouldn't follow. And I remember when I was told then at that time, no, I'm no longer disowned. When I was told at that time that I should go back and do something similar to the sciences, nursing, I remember standing up for myself for the first time and saying, I'm not doing it. And it was this woman that I was now living with, actually it was her husband, the father of the house, who believed in me enough to say, yeah, she doesn't need to do that. She can do something else. And he had noticed my writing for the first time. Somebody actually noticed my writing. And he had noticed my reading. And he said, do you want to do the arts? And are you interested in this, in debates? Do you want to do this? And although I had a science background, what I knew for sure was that I did not want to go back and do 2 years. So I told them that, okay, I will switch to the arts and I would go to Upper Seath and do the GC in 1 year and I will make it. And everybody was like, no, your track record, we can't invest that much and do that. That's not going to happen. And I said, that I think I can do it. And this first father figure now, believed in me and said, yes, she can do it. I believe she can do it. We should do that. So don't ask me how, but they got me admitted into final year high school and a school there in Yaoundé. And I remember that because of this person who believed in me for the first time and their encouragement, I worked as hard as I had ever worked. I keep telling people, if I survive that year, then I can do anything. Advanced levels are harder than university by far. Oh, university up to this point. But it's harder than undergrad, definitely. So if I could make it through that year, I could definitely make it through anything. I had to cram 2 years of studying into one. And I wouldn't have done that without faith. Because from that first, what that prayer also marked, with everything that keeps changing, with every little thing that works to your favor, or I won't say works to your favor, with every sign that you perceive, you see as something of God's doing, your faith grows a bit. So by the time I'm in this at this new boarding school, I am believing, but I'm still struggling. So that's 2007, towards the end, August, I began advanced level, and to 2008, that's 1 year of high school. And in the course of that year, I remember being asked that, okay, do you want to go travel, go leave Cameroon and go back to the US? And I remember that had been a big problem for me. I had wanted to go back. I was not supposed to be in Cameroon that long. I had left by the age of 6 and returned at the age of 12 on the condition, knowing at that time that I was going in a year's time. I was going to be back in a year's time. A year turned 2, and then I found myself up to Form 5, and nothing was actually, I wasn't going anywhere. So when I was offered this in 2008, I remember I was excited. I was eager for it, but I kept wondering also, because this was the first time I was performing well in school. First time I was enjoying school. I wasn't trying to prove myself to certain people, because some people already believed in me. So I had a friend called Ella, and I think she'll permit me to say her name here. Ella was more of one of the youngest, how can I say, youngest, most overt Christians I knew. Most of us were just Christians because we're going to Christian schools. Yeah, we're praying because our parents taught us how to pray and all of that, but it's not something we're taking so seriously. Ella studied her Bible the way I studied to get the GC that year. And she impressed me with her fervor. But yeah, I didn't see myself like Ella, but I did see the fact that I could learn from her. So when I had this opportunity come up, and I was told that, okay, they will apply for the visa for me, I told Ella, and I want to pray about it. And she said, well, do you think it's something important? Do you think you want to fast? That was my first fast. And believe me, I like food. So I think it was a 3-day fast just before the interview. And I don't know what we're praying for. In my case, I was praying that I should go, but I should go better, because I should go on a more firm footing to go address the people I would meet and actually take over my life again, because I was a bit more confident at that time. Ella was praying that I should stay and finish the academic year. And I didn't know what both of us were fasting. She said God's will be done, but she told me later on that in her heart I was really saying I want you to stay. Well, what happened is, went to the embassy for that interview, and something had happened that morning. Traffic, we were on time. I don't think it's traffic, we were on time, but there's a document that had an error, and suddenly that error was noticed only that morning, that we had to get it corrected. And somehow I missed the interview. I was late for the interview to get in, and I remember crying so hard. But as I was crying, I was thinking, this is actually an answer to the prayers, because Ella was leading the prayers during the fasting, and she always said, God, let your will be done. So if his will it was like his will was not that you should leave. And even as I was upset, I was also relieved, because I felt like, okay, this is another sign my faith was growing. This is another thing that made me believe that, okay, God answers, even if the answer is no. But at least I could tell he answered. It wasn't our doing, it was obviously something beyond our control. And from then on, my faith grew. Ella would give us, I would pray with Ella once in a while. She'd give me scripture verses to study, and whenever they say study a scripture verse, I was like, that means just read it, like you're rereading a book, because it's just a verse. So what exactly are you saying in study? But I was trying, and that marked my wanting to know, and it led me through the university. There was times when I would say, if I wasn't a Christian, or if I hadn't had that interest in wanting to do what's right by God prior to university, it wouldn't have worked. Because there's a lot of misinformation. There, we know the number of churches that will pass social stereotypes off as what is a scripture, and there's a lot of I won't call names of pastors here, but there's a lot of Christian material, Christian books, which kind of they just lie. And they just make it a lot more difficult than it should be especially for a young person. And I came across a book that did help me, A Purpose-Driven Life, and that's why I'm reading it now. So that's why I'm thinking about it. I read it in 2009 for the first time. It was amongst books that were shipped home and shipped to Cameroon, and I just found it literally just littered there. And I don't know what. Actually, I do know what caught my attention. The question at the top of the book said, "What on earth am I here for?" And I remember how many times I'd asked that question myself, like, "Why am I here? Is it worth it? And why didn't you leave me die?" And I think the book helped me a great deal, because it not only validated that you're worth living, you're supposed to be alive no matter what, but also that first reading, every time I read it something else changes, but that first reading helped me to see how I could use what the acrostic that the author developed, shape. I could use my shape, spiritual gifts, heart, experiences, and so on, to actually, like, my personality, to actually do something I enjoy. So for the first time, it made me think about what my purpose is. It made me consider what I could do to make life worth living. And though I had always written in my diary what I wanted to be, what I grew up, what my dream person is, this was the first time I was actually, like, making a detailed list, committing myself and praying over it. So this is what I want, and this is why I want it, and this is what I think I can do. This is what I think I'm on earth to do. And it shaped a lot of what being a Christian meant to me. Like, for example, now there's as I'm doing a rereading, and I came across the chapter on testifying. Remember, there's a line there that they say, when you're called to testify, you're not called to be an advocate for God. You're called to be a witness for God. So, like, what I'm doing right now, I'm not saying this is why you should believe in God. No. If God's going to find you the way he found me, because I didn't find him. But I am witnessing to what I have perceived as true from my experiences, what I have felt, how I have experienced the faith, how I have experienced him, how I've experienced the Christian journey, and what a relationship with him has meant to me. The book did grow me in a lot of ways, but I think the most lasting impression the book had on me was to assure me of the fact that you're worthy of the space you're taking up, you're worthy of the air you're breathing. And the second biggest lesson was to direct me to my purpose and how I can merge my passions with my purpose. I think that's also why I went into youth work, because my experience as a troubled young person, knowing that a lot of young people are misunderstood, their talents wasted, they don't know what they are here for, and they don't know where to be. And a lot of us are just following what parents want us to follow, parents who themselves don't know all that much, just what they have learned across their narrow paths in life. So I think that's what encouraged me to go into youth work. Yeah. And as of now, my interest in youth ministry. But can I say that I'm a Christian now? Getting to that, can I say, okay, now I'm a Christian, I'm fine? Not exactly. Yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I'm a Christian because I believe in Christ, and because I believe in my salvation through Christ alone, and I believe in um, the I believe in the sacrificial love of Christ, and I believe that's the only way to heaven, through Him. But if you're saying, am I a Christian, as in do I follow everything that the Christian values state? I don't think any of us do. No. I remember a quote I love so much from Maya Angelou, and she says in that quote that whenever she meets somebody and the person introduces themselves to her as a Christian, she's always like, already. Because to her, being a Christian is a growing thing. You grow into being a Christian. It's not something you can just attest to that you have arrived. And I agree with her to an extent. I understand where she's coming from. That I'm still growing into being Christian. I see my character change every day. I learn a new thing about myself. I die a bit you die a bit every day, because there are things you literally used to get angry at, and now you're just like, you know what? No, it's fine. Just go ahead. Or there are things things that wouldn't bother you before, but now you're like, they're against your convictions, and you're trying to be better. I think it's just the idea of trying and not giving up, just trying. So I wouldn't say post or so far into Christian journey, because that was in 2007 that I made that prayer, that I decided to become a Christian, not being baptized by parents or being confirmed because of peer pressure or peer influence. But from 2007 now it's 2018, 11 years later, I would say I'm still growing. So yes to my Angelus quote, but in another sense, I don't know, there's another quote I heard from a prophet or somebody that I know I do not like, but the quote remains. I know I do not like the person in general, but hey, even a fool says sense once in a while. So I just remember the quote, and the quote is that you don't say a baby who crawls is not a human because he's crawling. You acknowledge the fact that he's a human baby. He will grow up to be a man or a woman who can walk on 2 feet, but at that stage he's crawling. So this quote kind of explains that while I'm growing into being a Christian, but I can't also say I'm not a Christian because I'm a baby. You are a Christian, but you're still a baby. You're still crawling. You're still struggling to stand on your 2 feet. The thing is, a lot of us don't know that we're crawling. A lot of us think we're walking. In fact, a lot of us think we're running. I think that's a problem with a lot of the self-righteous. A lot of us think we're running, really running. So I would say committing to Christianity has taught me what life means. It has definitely not made anything easier. Okay. What it has made easier is learning how to love. The void you had prior to becoming a Christian, the lack of belonging you had, and all of that, it might still be there, but not as wide as it was before, because you belong somehow now. You know where you belong, to whom you belong. You know what it means to love, and you know that you receive love by loving. So yeah, the faith has changed that. Becoming a Christian has changed that. And I would say, in all, I'm sharing this testimony of my transition or my beginning of my Christian journey, or what being a Christian means to me, in hope that it helps somebody that is like I was, to find their own voice. But above all, what I would like people to take away is your belief in God does not negate your logic. You're allowed to question. Somebody would watch or somebody would hear of you being it's like I said at the beginning. Like I said at the beginning, that when you're testifying, you're sharing your personal experience with God. You're not out there to advocate for him. He can defend himself. But I know a lot of people say, perhaps if you weren't born in a Christian household, perhaps if you weren't born in the Christian regions in Cameroon, perhaps you would have had your salvation through your transition into the Islamic faith. And you should acknowledge this, that yes, there are influences. We wouldn't even have Christianity if not for colonialism. We should acknowledge the fact that the person as being depicted as Christ is often depicted as a white man with blue eyes, and not quite accurate, obviously, given the region that he's from. We should acknowledge these things. But I think in sharing your testimony, you're also acknowledging that you're not refuting the logic, the questions that are there, and which is something I think, a reason that I think a lot of people should allow Christians to question more, encourage people to study philosophy, to be able to know about different faiths, to be able to defend why it's yours, or actually not defend, or better express why it's yours, why yours is for you. And when we acknowledge these things as reality, when we acknowledge the influence, when we acknowledge the problems within our church, problems with our faith, when we acknowledge that these questions exist that we have not answered, we are also growing. And when we testify like this, we're countering, or not really countering, we're adding to those questions. That, okay, yeah, despite this doubt, this is also how I have seen him. This is how I have witnessed him influence my life, and this is why I pray. This is why I still believe. So I hope my testimony has helped somebody. I know it's been too long. It says it's over 50 minutes now. But for those who made it to the last minute, thank you. And God bless you.